Thanks for tuning in and welcome to Talk ETFs, ETF.com's weekly video series. I'm Sumit Roy, Senior Analyst for ETF.com, and today I'm joined by Marc D'Annunzio, General Counsel at Bakkt. Marc, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sumit. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. So, Marc, I'd love it if we can start off by having you tell us a little bit about Bakkt and what you do at the firm.
Sure. So Bakkt was started in 2018 by Intercontinental Exchange. For those in your audience who may not be aware, Intercontinental Exchange, based out of Atlanta, Georgia, is a global operator of exchanges and clearinghouses, both with respect to commodities and maybe more familiar names like the New York Stock Exchange. ICE owns and operates that. And so ICE began Bakkt in late 2018 as really kind of an institutionally minded interpretation of the crypto space and where they believed it was likely to go. Bakkt went public in late 2021, and so we are now an independent public company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. ICE is still a majority shareholder of the company, but we have an independent board and management team. And really the way that we view the space and our place within it really has not changed, which is that crypto as a technology, I think we believe has enormous potential, but the growth curve will really speed up when there is a sufficient amount of regulation and oversight and comfort among businesses and consumers and institutions that things that are taken as table stakes in more traditional areas of finance are also being paid attention to in crypto. The bankruptcies and other sort of high profile failures of the last couple of years are unfortunate, obviously, and there are people that have lost money and some folks have gone to jail and the like. But I see that at a sort of macro level as the maturation that the space kind of needs. Obviously, there's a lot of talk at the federal level about increased oversight and maybe a more comprehensive regulatory structure for the space, which we welcome. We think that will, it's not always pretty to watch the sausage get made as those debates are happening, but I think the end result of that should be a framework that everyone can feel more comfortable participating in. And at that point, I think you'll really see much more widespread adoption really across mainstream America. And ETFs are an important part of that.
And I'm glad you brought up ETFs. Obviously, we're here at ETF.com and we write about ETFs all day. And we've been following the spot Bitcoin ETF saga really closely. Are you involved with any of the spot Bitcoin ETFs that are on the market today?
So we are seeking to be involved with ETFs broadly. We began as an institutionally focused company. So in 2019, we launched Bakkt Trust Company, which is a dedicated crypto custodian licensed by NYDFS. And the first role of that trust company was to provide custody for physically delivered Bitcoin futures contracts that were traded on ICE, as well as really institutional grade crypto custody to investors, usually institutional investors. And so custody is at the core of everything that we do, whether it's retail or whether it's institutional. And we have custody capabilities that certainly can support an ETF. And that's something I think that we're in discussions with various providers about. And it's a logical extension of kind of what we built and what we can do.
And Marc, how much does custody matter when it comes to these spot Bitcoin ETFs? I know, most investors don't really think about custody when they're buying their ETF, but it seems to me that it's a big deal when it comes to Bitcoin, given the risk of coins getting lost or even stolen.
Yeah, I think it's really foundational. And I think, Sumit, what you said is right. It's in a lot of contexts, it's kind of unsung, right? Like no one thinks about it until there's a problem or until the coins aren't there or there's some other issue. But from our perspective, again, and I think we owe a lot of this, frankly, to ICE, right? I mean, ICE understands the importance of custody from being involved in traditional markets for 25 plus years. And so from our perspective, that was always the first thing to build and the first thing to get right. And so from our perspective, it's fundamental, not just to ETFs, but to everything else that we as a company do and seek to do.
And Marc, obviously we have the spot Bitcoin ETF right now, but now everyone's moving on to the next thing, which is Ether. What are your thoughts on the prospects for a spot Ether ETF? Is it a foregone conclusion now that we have spot Bitcoin ETFs?
I don't think I would put it that way. Obviously, the approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs is a net positive for the space. I know obviously folks had waited for those approvals for a long time, and it felt like the SEC extended about as long as they legitimately could before approving them. But I think it's not necessarily a one-for-one to then take that and assume that spot ETH ETFs must be right around the corner in terms of getting approved. As you're probably aware, the SEC, the current administration's SEC has taken a really broad view of which crypto tokens ought to be considered securities. There's a lot of confusion about that. It depends on who you talk to and on what day. But I think until that sort of fundamental issue is resolved, I think that will slow the adoption, the approval of a spot ETF for Ethereum and other tokens that the commission potentially could be securities. And going back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, I think it's another example of some of the clarity I think that Congress could inject into the space by just making it clear once and for all, which token is governed by which regulator and how it can be bought and sold. ETH obviously has transitioned to proof of stake, which probably muddies that picture a little bit further. And so again, I think Bitcoin. I don't want to say Bitcoin is a special case, but I think it had been accepted for a long time that Bitcoin was a commodity in a manner that is unlike a lot of the other tokens. And so, frankly, that probably, and again, not that there were not other issues to get across to get those approved, but that was a potentially big issue that really wasn't an issue, right? So obviously there were other things that needed to get solved for those approvals, but I don't necessarily look at ETH the same way. I mean, I think eventually we'll have to come to a decision on that, but it will probably be in the context of coming to a decision about a lot of other things about ETH and other tokens.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Mark. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Sumit. Appreciate the time.